All right. Very first thing I need to do is just get all of my thoughts out of my body. The wires are so crossed. They are so crossed between my own personal feelings, what I do professionally, the thoughts of feeling like an imposter because I feel like I failed because I can't, because I've had human reactions and I have so many thoughts and so many things to say and I am all over the place and I need to get everything out of my body so that I can reset and start over. So, first of all, I want to say that without a shadow of a doubt, I know exactly what side of history I will stand on. I think for most of us, after Harris stepped in and stepped up to become the candidate to replace Biden, I think most of us who were voting for her never even thought for a second we would lose. The reality is this: when the election first started and it was Biden versus Trump, I was terrified. Most of us were terrified. Actually, I would wager to say all of us. The entire country was at a freeze and was terrified. Let's face it. If you are a Trump supporter, you were terrified. If you are not a Trump supporter, you are terrified because the not Trump supporters knew Biden was not our best chance. We didn't want Biden to win. Okay. We didn't want Biden. He would have had our support because, being totally honest, I would have voted for a pink elephant if that's who was running. Okay. But I didn't want it to be Biden. And I didn't think Biden was the best choice for Democrats. When Biden chose to step down and Harris stepped up, not only did we feel like she is qualified, not only did we feel like she is poised and a prosecutor that she has that our the whole of our morals align. Do I agree with her on every single policy she has? No. And I'm willing to bet that most Trump supporters don't actually agree with every single policy he has, right? So here's the deal. There was this huge energetic shift, and it actually felt like the momentum that we were gaining, we had such hope. And not only did we think that we were going to truly beat Trump, but we also truly thought that this was it. If there was ever a time that this country would support and endorse a female candidate, and not only female, but a female who is Black and Asian, whew, this was it. This was the time. It was going to happen. We were going to shift the tides and do it. And the amount of Democratic voters, the amount of Republican voters who do not support Trump but refuse to vote Democratic, the number of non voters, fuck, never in a million years did I think so few people would turn out to vote in what is quite historically, especially in our lifetime, one of the most important races to our democracy. So to wind up devastated is an understatement. Devastated didn't even begin to cover the emotion and the feeling. And then there was fear. there was fear of Project 2025. There is fear that is so deep. For most of us, it's hard to explain. And then there's the gaslighting, the abuse, the nastiness, the trolls. And it hurts. But see, it's not going to stop me. It's not going to stop me because I'm strong enough to take it, and I will gladly take it over. I will take it over allowing it to happen to other people. Like, give it to me before you give it to other people who've been fighting so much heavier, so many different things, right? There was a disappointment in the low number of voters. There was a disappointment in how many people in our country don't care enough, don't have the skill set of critical thinking, are just plain uneducated. And I stand by that statement. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that as a stigma. I don't say that as talking about people I don't know. Because here's the thing. If you are standing in spewing and repeating his lies, and you have not actually done any research on these little computers that we carry around all day, if you have not actually opened up that great big G to say, what does the word tariff actually mean? What is the definition? How does a tariff actually work? If you don't have the skill set to critically think that a company, a corporation is not going to eat the cost, I don't care who technically is even paying it. Let's just say, for instance, that it is paid by the exporting company, which is not truth. It's not how tariffs work. But let's say that is. They aren't going to eat the cost of that tariff. They're going to raise their prices to incorporate the tariff to be paid by the companies who are importing. And the companies who are importing now have to pay more. So guess what? That means we now have to pay more. See, if you honestly look and you honestly truly believe that everything happens instantaneously and there is not this trickle down, every single president who comes in, their presidency is actually defined by the next president. Like, I know that's hard to understand, but see, like, you come into presidency. Roe versus Wade was overturned during the Biden administration. But guess what? That was Trump that did it, not Biden. Biden didn't put the ball in motion. Trump did. Higher gas prices, higher food prices. That was all put in motion before Biden got there. And granted, I will say this, I think a lot of that was put in motion also due to the pandemic. Not all on Trump's shoulders, but Trump had a lot to do with a lot of it. I have no problem, and I am one of the least judgmental people. I truly, honestly believe that wholeheartedly. And I truly, honestly believe people who know me would say the same thing. I am a safe person. And I think one of the biggest struggles I've been having is because I can't be a safe person for Trump supporters. I can't. And that goes against every morsel of my being. It goes against everything I believe and everything that I am. I cannot be a safe person for you because every single thing that you stand for and you vote for impacts me and my children. And that's where I draw the line. When you're changing the laws of humans that I love and care about, when you're changing the law to say that this is the only way to do it, when you're changing the law to say this is what we have to believe, this is our God, this is what we have to teach in schools, we are going to rewrite history, that we are going to ban books, that we are going to take away women's rights. When you are ignorant enough that you don't want to learn, you don't want to say, why does this have you so upset? Why are you so emotional? Let's talk about it. No, instead, you turn around and you call us crying snowflakes. You gaslight us. You tell us to stop being emotional. You try to tell us you're not taking away our rights. And see, I can't be a safe place for that. And I'm really struggling with that hard. I'm struggling with it so hard because I hate stereotypes. I hate making generalized assumptions. And I truly believe that most of the people who are supporting Trump don't actually know what they're supporting, which is why I will continue to say you're uneducated. And you will never change my mind on that, because I just do not believe when you look at endorsements, we have a convicted felon who is supported and endorsed by the KKK, the Heritage Foundation, the alt-right, the most polarizing, vile humans, disbarred attorneys, attorney generals, mayor. I don't even know. What the fuck did Giuliani do? I know that he was in New York City during 9/11. I don't know what his government position was, but I know he was important, but I know he was an attorney who's lost his fucking license. You're endorsed by criminals. Because see, with upstanding citizens, they don't lose their standing in the bar. And while I don't believe that most Americans who voted for him are at that same level, what I do believe, and I will continue to say you're uneducated because, and if you're not uneducated, if you are going to sit here and presume that you are so educated, then you are just outright racist. That's all I got. And see, here's the whole thing. It can't be argued, because even if you're going to tell me you're not a racist, being a rapist, being a racist, being a criminal is not a deal breaker for you. It's not a deal breaker for you. I can't be a safe space for that, because that is everything I am fighting. With every ounce of my being, I will fight it. And I tried for a long time to keep to my politics. I think if you ever scrolled my content previously, my politics were always clear. But I tried really hard not to like expressly state obnoxiously over and over again what my politics were. And for that, I will be forever regretful. Because you see, and maybe that was a lesson I needed right now. Because I worried about putting too much content out there, which wasn't what I was really selling. But now this is the position we're in. And I cannot sit here and say I did everything I could, because I could have done more. And so now I vow that I will do more. I think for most of us, for myself, I'm speaking for myself when I say this. Something inside me died the day that Roe was overturned. And it changed a lot of things for me that day. One of them being my trust in the entire government. One of them being my trust in the Supreme Court. One of them being how much I trust that one person, the president, how much power they actually have. Because you know what? I believe that the president, I believe he can undo all of the checks and balances that have been put in place. I mean, to me, growing up in the 80s and 90s, right? It was only clear that I'm not a law student. I wish I was. I always wanted to go to law school and I never did because I didn't want to be an attorney. And now I wish to fucking God I went to law school. But see, the thing is like, it only makes sense that our Supreme Court would have to be bipartisan. They would have to be bipartisan. You can't put an extremist into the Supreme Court because you are ruling on law. Nothing else. No feeling, no personal feeling at all. See, I remember taking a law class back in college and we had to debate abortion. I will never forget. We were doing a case review. And I don't remember the exact case, but I do remember the critical thinking skills involved to think like an attorney, to think like a judge, to think on both sides. And at the end of the day, what the professor was looking for was, is a fetus a baby? When does a fetus become a baby? At what point? Now, I always thought it was perfectly clear that if a sac of cells cannot survive outside of the womb, well, that can't be a baby, right? Because the definition of a baby would be like a whole being who has all of their organs and parts and can survive. Not even getting into mother's human rights, the trickle down on the entire healthcare system, all of these other things. Okay? Not even getting into all of that. Just simply, what is the definition of a baby? When does a fetus become a baby? And this was back in 2002, maybe 2001, 2002, like way back. I remember in high school and college being told over and over again that Roe could never be overturned. In fact, I actually believed, somehow stupidly, I didn't even realize it wasn't codified until it was overturned. Because it had been on the books for 60 years. I always thought it was just a talking point for politicians. I always thought it was like that common denominator thing, like the good old boys club, like, well, yeah, we are pro-life, so we're better than you, but we don't actually have a chance of making that reality. Fuck, was I wrong? I wonder if my teachers knew how wrong they were back then. And see, ever since that day when that happened, a piece of me died. Because right away, and what I didn't understand is how people can be so ignorant that they don't understand the trickle down effect. And I think I would prefer to believe that they are ignorant and uneducated and not smart over believing that that level of evil exists in so many people. But you know what this election proved? That level of evil is what exists. So when that happened and Biden was in office and we knew it wasn't likely he was going to be able to overturn it, turn it back, but I had hope. And I let it go because I knew things had to be done through the proper channels. And then I let it go through this election because, again, I had hope that if Harris got in office and within the next 4 years we get rid of 2 justices, we get 2 more, like I had hope that we could do this on a political scale correctly, that we could right the wrongs that we made, which we actually can never do. Because I can promise you that the husbands, the boyfriends, the mothers, the sisters, the children of all of the women who've died because of these ignorant laws will never right it for them. That wrong will never be righted. There is not a fucking thing we can do to make it better. Nothing. And the worst was as you start getting passionate about this and people are like, huh, don't be so emotional. I am emotional. What the fuck is wrong with you that you're not emotional? How do you not understand the gravity? How do you not understand that this has never been about babies? This has never been about life because there's no way that a true pro-lifer, a true person who values life would allow mothers to suffer and die and still not have that baby to show for it. Because let me newsflash, I don't know if you know this, but like if mom dies at 22 weeks, guess what? That baby's not making it. I can't believe the amount of absolute idiots who believe that there are births happening and then we are executing babies. That is not a thing. And this is exactly what I mean. Like the orange baboon stands up there and says they are eating the cats and dogs. And you can't tell me that the people voting are educated as they are believing it, as they are reciting it. You can't tell me that the people who are voting for him are Christians. I'm an ex-Catholic here. I still consider myself to be a Christian loosely. And I struggle with this because I am extremely spiritual and I do believe in a higher power. And I was brought up in the confines of the Bible. And I guess when I say I'm Christian, I use that term and under like I agree with the morals, like don't kill, don't rape, don't this, don't we can't own other humans. Like I agree with like moral grounds. But when people say to me, and these are things I've heard Trump supporters say, well, if you don't go to church anymore, if you're not Christian anymore, how do you know how not to sin? What is your motivation to not sin? Excuse me? I don't sin because I'm a good fucking person. That's why I don't sin. Has nothing to do with God. My motivation to not sin was not so that I could not go to hell, which PS, if that is truly what we're saying, how do you then turn around and choose somebody who has admitted to sexual assault? Who has admitted that women are less than? And I'm struggling with this really, really hard because, as I said, I know that I have to do more and I know that I have to do better. And I fucking plan to, which also means that political stuff has to somehow work its way into my content, into the core of what I do teach, coach. 100%. But see, I also feel like a failure as a professional and as a coach because I had a very human reaction. Because I've, at times, especially in the past 2 to 3 days, I have allowed MAGA supporters to goad me, to get me riled, to gaslight me. I've engaged when I shouldn't have. And I get angry at that. I get angry at myself for that because I'm better than that. I am better than them. I don't say that about many people. I don't say that about many circumstances. And I'll say it has nothing to do with what color skin they have, how old they are, where they live, how much money they have, any of those things. I am better than them simply because I understand the character of who they voted for. And I value humans over him. I never wanted to be right this election. I never wanted to prove them wrong. Never. Like the last thing still to this day right now, like I hope and pray that I am wrong in what he's about to do. But I don't think I am. And I get torn because I'm like, I have to do better and I have to do more. And then I'm hearing other creators, other people of influence who are saying, we need to protect ourselves because our safety is now in jeopardy. And I agree with that. I do agree that our safety is in jeopardy, 100%. And I agree that this is a very, very deeply personal choice for everybody, 100%. I agree that there are people who need to take down their signs, delete old content, and go on their merry way as if they didn't vote for Harris. I, however, will not be one of them. I have already contacted my mother. I will be making full arrangements to make sure that should anything happen to me, jail, prison, death, whatever the case may be, that my children are properly taken care of. And I feel really awful as a mother saying that I am willing to leave my children to fight this war. Because I absolutely, under no circumstances, will I roll over and become one of his little Nazis. I will be running an underground railroad. I will be shuttling women wherever they need to go. I will be a safe space and a safe haven until I am physically no longer able. And if that means that I have to be separated from my children for their own safety, that's what I'll do. Because this is a mountain and this is a hill that I will die on. Because I will be fucking damned if I will be 85 years old, living in our little dystopian, whatever we're going to call it, world, telling my daughter about what life was like before 2025. telling her what it used to be like. I won't do it. Not without a fucking fight. And if that's the world they end up in, they will at least be able to say, my mom fought like hell so that it wouldn't happen to be like this. I won't. When people say, why are you so emotional? Because it's personal. It's so personal. Because we've watched history, we learned history. And my entire life, I never could understand how Hitler came to power. Never. I couldn't understand it. And now, I'm living it. I'm living how Hitler came to power. They banned books. This is exactly how it started. So, for all of my Trump supporters who say they're not racist, and they truly, in their heart, and I do believe this, in their heart, they do not believe that he is going to do what Hitler did. Okay. I never wanted to prove you right or wrong. I never wanted to be right. Never. But this is how it started. And I'm scared. And I'm not scared for me. I'll be honest. I'm not scared for me. I'm 42 years old. I'm white and I'm pretty. I'm not scared for me. I'm scared for every Black woman in this country. I am scared for every single person in the LGBTQ. I am terrified for our children. Every single thing that I preach and coach is about standing in your skin, who you are, being comfortable, being safe in your skin. And the only people from here on out, the only people who will ever feel safe in their skin is white supremacists. That guts me. But it brings up another point because, again, I coach being safe in your skin. I coach making the decisions to get to that point. Okay? That's what I'm all about. Standing in your freedom, full freedom. To all of the people who don't want to say what their beliefs are, to all of the people who want to say we can agree to disagree, to all of the people who were quiet, tiptoed around, but went into that booth and voted for Trump. This guts me to say it. It absolutely guts me, but I'm going to say it. I have more respect for the white supremacists than I do for you. Because at least, while I don't agree with it, and I think they are as evil could be, I actually think white supremacists are worse than serial killers, like being totally honest. I truly believe that. White supremacists are scarier and worse than serial killers. Like I would rather sit with Dahmer than sit with Nick Fuentes, JD Vance, Matt Walsh, any of them. Like I would rather be in a room with Dahmer and Bundy. Okay. Just so we're perfectly clear on how I feel about that. But I have more respect for them, for the white supremacists. And you know why? Because at least they don't fucking hide it. They fucking know who they are and they fucking own it. I think Nick Fuentes is one of the most vile human beings on the face of this planet. And if I was his mother, I can't even say what I would do. And thank God I don't have to. And the only thing I can think is she's probably just as vile as he is. But in the event that she's not, because don't forget, children grow into their own humans, and that they don't always. There are sociopaths that it wasn't because their parents did something wrong. Like, I just want to point that out. I don't know his mother, so I can't place judgment. I'm just saying, my child, and while I think he's the most vile human being on the face of this earth, he doesn't pretend to respect women. So you know what? Those of you women out there who get in bed with him, he showed you exactly who the fuck he is. And yet you're like, yeah. I think he's vile and disgusting, but he fucking owns his vile and disgusting shit in his own skin. This country has so much work to do. I don't even know where we begin. Because we've spent the past 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, 25 years just trying to explain the concept of white privilege. And this is coming from a white girl who has on so many occasions attempted to explain this to her white brother, who will never understand it. He will never understand it. And he gets offended when you say it. But I want to be perfectly clear because, see, this country cannot make a comeback without white men. I am a full-blown hardcore feminist. But in my definition of feminism, that does not mean I hate men, and that does not mean I don't want men in my life, and I don't believe men are good. That's not true. I do not believe that we can change a fucking thing without men. But we cannot change a thing without the men who understand and are aware of their privilege. And see, one of the greatest misconceptions about white privilege is that we resent you for it, that we blame you, that we think you're inherently bad because of it. And none of that is actually true. Where those cases where you see that show up, that's because you are inherently bad. It has nothing to do with the fucking color of your skin. Well, I mean, it does. It does. It contributes. But it's that you are inherently bad because you refuse to acknowledge the fact that your voice goes 10 times farther than anyone else's in this country. If you are a white man, your voice travels so much farther, so much faster than anyone else's. And if you don't recognize that, then you're not using your voice correctly or for the right side or for the good of the whole. And the men who are worrying about that, the men who have this guilt and shame around it, do you want to know what that feeling of discomfort is? It's because you are scared that it's because deep down you understand and you are fully aware that you have white privilege and how much better your life is because of it. And you are scared that if we even the playing field, you're going to start losing. Because inherently, as a human, how you stack up to other humans, it's not all that great. You're not all that good. You're not all that different. You don't really have anything special to give anyone. And now that might be a total lie, but you don't have the confidence or the belief that you do, at least, is what I'm saying. Because if you did, if you truly believe that there was enough wealth and success for everybody in this country to be happy and to be healthy and have more than enough in their life, then there's nothing to guard. There's nothing to gatekeep. You don't need to guard your privilege because everybody else trying to equal the playing field, we're not actually trying to knock you down. We're not trying to take anything away from you. We just want to be included. We just want to be seen as human. And see, that leads into my next thought. This whole election, no, I can't say this whole election. There was a point in this election when things shifted. Okay, so let me preface this. I grew up in the 80s and 90s in white suburbia. I learned in school that civil rights was in the 60s and that everybody is equal. And I believed it. I believed it. I was out of college and working my first corporate job before Trayvon Martin was shot and killed. And I remember at that time, in that we're going back to like, I don't know the exact dates. I did not look it up. I'm going to take a wild swing and stab and say somewhere in 2010, somewhere in there, when it was before George Floyd, but it started right. I believe it was Trayvon Martin where it started, and there was this random string of news that started with, so and so got pulled over, they resisted arrest, and we started seeing this. I don't want to say it like that. The news started making police brutality at the forefront of news again, because for many, many years it wasn't. Okay, like let's just be honest, it wasn't. It was dead, it was buried. Those stories did not get to the front page. They didn't make it to World News Tonight. And then they did, and I remember when it very first started, and I remember there was a story, and I do not remember the teenager's name or what state it was even in. But he had a toy gun. And back in that day, they did not have to be different colors. They did not have to have the orange tip on the end. They did not have to, like, it was a different set of laws. So he had a toy gun. Somebody called the police because they were scared. They were in a park, and the police officers showed up. Needless to say, I'm almost certain the kid was shot and killed. And I remember thinking in my head, back in those times, like, police officers' first concern is always the safety of themselves and the community, first and foremost. And when you go through any sort of gun training, when you go through any sort of law enforcement, gun carrying job, you are told very specifically that if you need to draw your weapon to shoot, you shoot to kill. Bottom line, because drawing your weapon should be the absolute last resort. Finger on the trigger, absolute last resort. So if you're not shooting to take out a kneecap like they do in the movies, you're not shooting, and there's so many reasons for that, right? And I agree with that sentence and that statement. And that sentence and statement and sentiment is said in such a way that, like, let's be honest, that's because we are assuming all de-escalation tactics have already been tried and failed. We are assuming that the cops' lives are in immediate danger. We are assuming that racial profiling is not going on. We are assuming that the person they are drawing their weapon on is truly a bad person. And you have to understand, I grew up in white suburbia, and my heart has been in law enforcement and social justice since I was tiny. Social justice has always had my heart. I haven't quite it didn't quite find my place for a really, really, really long time. But that's where social justice is where I stand. And so I truly couldn't understand or didn't realize or didn't know better that there were police officers who were racist and who just wanted a power trip. Like, I didn't get it. But see, here's the thing. I can fully admit and say that now and then, because the first time I was like, well, the kid shouldn't have resisted arrest, right? Like Trayvon Martin, like, you shouldn't have resisted. Like, and I started going through, like, but by the fourth or fifth time that you're saying, well, they shouldn't have resisted arrest, and then you start seeing some camera footage and going, well, wait a second, were they really resisting? Hold on. Wait, the kid had nothing in his hands, right? Like, as things progressed, we started seeing more and more evidence, and we started looking at the statistics and doing the research, because we have these computers in our hands. We have the world of knowledge in an instant. Like, we don't need to go to the library and go to the encyclopedias anymore. We don't need to find the card catalog, and no, we have everything we need at our fingertips. And you start putting pieces together and realizing there are trends here. And just because somebody is speeding, maybe they've got, I don't know, yeah, okay, they've got some coke in the car. Do they deserve to die? No. And then you start hearing their mothers, and you start understanding that in white skin, I've never once been worried or scared when the police pulled me over. I have never once been worried or scared when the police pulled over and I was the passenger and a white man was driving the car. Never. I've never, ever, ever experienced that fear in my life. And I, albeit very, very ignorantly, did not realize that that's what was going on. That there are people in this country who are teaching their children things that, as a white mother, I will never have to teach my children. And then George Floyd happened. And it was clear as fucking day that there was no resist. We were beyond excessive force. And there was no possible way that I could stand and say, everybody's equal, because they're not. Everybody's life is not equal. And when I say I stand for social justice, I stand because I stand for everybody's life to be equal. Wholeheartedly. You want to know the truth? I don't believe in the death penalty. I really don't. I I don't believe everybody can be rehabilitated at the same time either. I believe there's plenty of people who have absolutely no remorse, and they are not good people, and they are sociopaths, and they're awful. But that doesn't mean I think we should kill them. On top of the fact that I believe wholeheartedly in due process, and when we start talking about appeals and money and court and all of the things, it costs us so much more money to execute a prisoner than to keep them in jail for the rest of their life. Like, let's just be totally honest. It economically doesn't even make sense. So the fact that our Republicans, who are so fucking worried about our money and are so pro life, can also advocate for the death penalty, like, I make it make sense. Make it make sense, because it doesn't make sense to me. Part of evolution and part of growth is understanding that as we evolve and as we grow, our beliefs have to expand. My beliefs had to expand. They had to fully accept the fact that the world as I knew it growing up, the world as I knew it as a teenager, in college, and as a young adult, none of that was real. None of that was real. So as our view expands and broadens, we have to be able to step back and say, at one point, I ignorantly stood and said, well, don't resist arrest. Until I learned I was wrong. Until I learned that racism is rampant in this country. Until I started looking and learning at how systemic racism has contributed, until I started doing the math and realizing that there are Black men spending longer terms in jail for crimes that are no longer even crimes in today's world, right? Like, we're talking like weed. Like, there are no longer criminalized in many states. They have a longer, harsher prison sentence, and they're still serving time for crimes that are no longer crimes than a fucking white college kid who gets caught sexually assaulting an unconscious co-ed. What? So see, then as things began to come clearer and clearer, and because then not only did I realize then that racism still existed, I began to open my eyes to really understand white privilege and what that truly means. And what that means is Brock Turner is the perfect example. Trump is the perfect example. Do you think Obama would have been elected if he admitted to sexual assault? Fuck no. And let's face it. Let's face it. Not only is Obama much better looking, but Obama has that charisma, that magnetic energy, right? And that is proof because he's the first Black president to be elected. So that is proof of exactly how charismatic he is. God, that was such an amazing, fucking amazing day to watch his inauguration. How proud. I was so proud to be an American that day. I was so excited to watch our country shift forward, only to find that here we are 8 years later, fucking going so far backwards. And the reason I'm bringing all of this up about racism is because it's not only is it so important, but when we talk about people, there's a hair. Okay. When we talk about needing to expand our views and how important it is. I had a conversation the other day with a 50-something-year-old white man. I've known him for quite a while now, right? I've known him probably for about a year. We talk regularly. I know he has an amazing heart. I know he is a good person. Okay. I know that probably about 2 or 3 months ago, he made a joke and I shut it down real quick because it was an off-color, tasteless joke. And I knew he was joking. I knew the heart he was saying it with, but it didn't matter because that right there is a joke in a topic that is just not funny. And I will not allow it in my presence. See, it took me a long time to grow into that woman, to the woman who says, another joke like that again, you will never speak to me again. I will cut you from my life because the first time is okay. We all say things we shouldn't say. We all make mistakes. But a second time tells me it's not a mistake. And if you make it again, if you do it again, then and I'm telling you my boundaries and how clearly I feel, then that ends our relationship. Because that's a clear cross of my boundaries. And he apologized and never, ever made another joke like that again. And it was yesterday, so it was Thursday, right? The election is over. He knows I'm devastated. And I don't remember what he said. I said something about Roe. I said something about how personal it is to me, and I said something about it being the hill that I will die on. And this isn't the first time I've said this, but this is the first time that his response changed. Because he said to me, "Can I ask you some questions about that?" And I know him enough to know that they were going to be respectful questions. This was not baiting a debate, a fight, an argument, right? Like I knew that's not what he was doing. I knew it was genuine. So I said, "Of course you can. I'm happy. I am always happy to sit down and have a very civilized conversation where two sides are educating on their viewpoint so that we can find the common denominator." And I said, "Sure." And that's when I realized that he was clueless. He genuinely 100% had no idea that Roe meant anything more, that he did not understand that giving the power back to the states, he did not understand what that actually was doing. He didn't understand the laws. So he literally was like, you keep saying we took away the rights, but we gave the rights back to the states. So can you explain why that's such a bad thing?" And see, this is the thing, is to everybody running around who's on MAGA, who's supporting Trump, who's every time we say this, you're taking away our rights. Nobody is saying, why do you feel like that? Instead, they're saying, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. But you did. And let me explain to you how and why you did. And as I jumped and launched into my own personal views, okay, I also forwarded a podcast to him, a podcast episode. It was Glennon Doyle. Um, we can do hard things. I don't remember the episode number, but I have it. I can link it if I end up posting this. Um, and I am very well educated on the topic, and that podcast episode shook me to my core. And I was not learning anything I didn't know, and it shook me to my core. So as I'm explaining to him that here's the reality. What you did was you rolled back federal protections on human life and on humans. So federal protections, and I'm not sure if it was I think federal protections was 15 weeks. And do not quote me on that because I truly am not 100% sure. But if the federal protection is 15 weeks, states can have different laws, but they cannot have less than what is federally protected. That is the minimum amount that every state must adhere to. So when you rolled that back and you gave it to the states, now we have states where it's completely total bans. We have six-week heartbeat bans. We have and here's the thing that not only though, and like I said to him, I go, this is not, he's like, you guys keep saying, he's like, everybody keeps saying healthcare, and I don't get how this is healthcare. Like it's just an abortion. No, because that's the ignorance of not understanding and not doing the research. So if abortions, first of all, abortion is a medical term and we've made it political. Abortion is the termination of a pregnancy, which means if you have a miscarriage, your chart says abortion. If you have a stillbirth, a birth, technically, a birth is an abortion. It's the termination of pregnancy. Once you birth the baby, you are no longer pregnant. The pregnancy is terminated. Do you understand this? So we are not just talking about women who just don't want another baby. And while I thank God every single day, and I mean that quite literally, that I've never had to make that decision. I've never had to even almost consider. I've never had to think about it. I've never had to ponder it. I don't know what I would do. Personally, I've never felt like I could actually have an abortion. Like, I personally don't feel like I could go through with it. But I will say this. Again, that's coming from a white girl in middle suburbia with two parents who are extremely supportive, with grandparents who would have, if I was 16 and got pregnant, I mean, everybody would have been pissed, don't get me wrong. But I would have had a village to help me raise the baby. Not everybody has that. Okay. And the reality is, there are more abortions happening that are so far from political that I can't even describe it. They are happening for things like Personally, 42. I've had an ablation. 2017, I had an ablation for medical reasons. If by somehow, if I got pregnant, I would die. If I was in Texas, if I was in Louisiana, I would die. Because guess what? I have no lining inside my uterus. Proceeding with a pregnancy would kill me. The baby absolutely would not be viable. There's no chance of the baby being viable. But I would have to wait till I was on death's door, 3 breaths away with sepsis before they would be able to treat me. Even though that is a fact that I've known since 2017 when I had the medical procedure done. We are criminalizing intent. When you start criminalizing intent, do you know what we're doing? We're driving doctors out of the area. Doctors take an oath to save people. And even my doctor was at a Catholic hospital. They didn't prescribe birth control. They certainly didn't perform elective abortions. They didn't tie tubes. They didn't do any of that. It was a Catholic hospital. But they were the first ones to tell me that if I were to somehow accidentally get pregnant, I would need an abortion. And they would perform it because it would be about my life. And the baby was never viable. And yet I sat and I listened to lawmakers on Congress's floor talking about retrieving an embryo of an ectopic pregnancy and reimplanting it, relocating it into the uterus. That's not a thing. I listened to a politician who talked about asking us to swallow something the same way you would for a colonoscopy or other procedures, right? With a camera so that they could see the uterus. You can't get to your uterus from your mouth. So we have men who literally have zero. I mean, not only can they not find the clit, but like they don't even know what the fuck a fallopian tube is. They know nothing about our human anatomy. They're making outlandish requests and claims. And they're writing laws on it. So our entire healthcare system starts failing because these men would rather leave children, already breathing, living children, they would rather give them more trauma by allowing their mother to die than give her the care that she needs. And this 50-some-year-old man, as I said my story, and then he listened to the podcast and he came back to me and he was like, fuck, Tab, I was so ignorant. I was so wrong. I am so sorry. He's like, I had no idea. He's like, I thought we were just talking about women who are using abortion as birth control. Yeah, I get that. But that's what everybody out there thinks. And I truly believe that is what most MAGA supporting, Trump supporting people believe. And that's where they feel like they're sitting on their high horse and we're murderers. But that's not actually what's happening. That's not what's happening. That's not what the laws actually say. Because the number of Trump supporters who have come back to me and said, we're not talking about a DNC, which is the procedure after you have a miscarriage that scrapes your lining and ejects the baby. You're not talking about that, but the laws are. The laws prevent a D&C. There are cases where women have Googled something about miscarriage, right? Maybe out of fear, because let me tell you, when you're pregnant, you Google shit you never thought you would Google because you just don't know. Your body is doing all these things it never did before. You are fucking terrified because you're trying to grow this human that you want to grow, and everything feels different. So you Google something and then it's in your search history. And these idiots think that we can swallow something and see inside our uterus. They think they can take an embryo and reimplant it. So yeah, they actually do think that you can intentionally miscarry, which you can't. I've had miscarriages. You can't. And let me tell you, the guilt and the shame and the trauma associated with a miscarriage is more than enough. We don't need to add worry on top of that onto our women that they could be criminalized. And if you travel out of state, they want to stop you from traveling out of state. They want to criminalize it if you go to a different state to get that abortion, to get the healthcare, to get the procedure. They're going to criminalize it. And if you tell somebody, you're putting them in danger too because they knew. And also, can you really trust them? We're right back to the Holocaust. We are right back to, can I really trust you? Are you going to rat me out? But more so than that, let's talk about how a lot of red states are completely locked by red. They're completely locked by red. We're not talking an hour drive to get from New York to PA or PA to New York, right? Like, no. And I know that neither of those have illegal in those states. It's just my geography that I know. We are talking, you have to travel through 2 or 3 states. We are talking about time off of work. We are talking about there is a level of privilege that is needed in order to make that happen. And then we hear things like pro-lifers, again, these Trumpers who say things like, well, I don't understand what you're so pissed about because where you live, it's legal. For now, what if it's not next week? And you know what? Even when I was in New York, even when I knew it would always be legal, there's not a day that's gone by since the day that was passed that I have not woken up thinking at least once a day about the millions of women where it's not legal. And then they say things like, well, just move. You can't just pack up and move. That's not practical, and we would never say that to a man. Again, privilege. We have humans who couldn't afford to evacuate during a hurricane. Because if you can't evacuate, that is privilege. This is where that definition of privilege gets really like, as white people, we forget to check it. We forget to say, oh yeah, it's not that easy. And that's not even getting into, I haven't even touched yet on the fact that when you look at the rates, when you look from a socioeconomical, when you look from a social welfare perspective on what banning abortion does, it's bad. It's really, really bad. And it's banned by the same people who don't want to help anybody take care of it. They don't want these social programs in place. They don't want to help these moms then get back and finish their degrees and make their better life. Because again, you know what? Our entire social welfare system is broken. Because when you are on assistance, you are on food stamps, and your income goes up this much, so you lose your food stamps. But your food stamps were $600 a month. Your income went up $250 a month. Now you lost that whole 600. Guess what? You are still in the negative. We've created a system designed to keep people there. And then we get mad at them for staying there, which is bullshit. So when I say there's a lot that I have to process, there's a lot to process because I am fucking angry. I am angry at the ignorance of this country. And I want to educate, and I want to do so in a lovingly calm and respectful way. But I also understand completely that you can only educate those who are willing to be educated. So again, when I say the people who voted for him are uneducated, and if they are not uneducated, they are a white supremacist. It's one of the two. Can't be both. Well, it could, it's usually not both. It's usually one of the two, but there's no third option. And if you say, I am educated, I'm not a white supremacist, I am not racist, and I am educated, but you're not willing to sit down and have an open-ended conversation and explore, like, with facts, then you can't call yourself educated. I'm sorry. Because the number of Trumpers who were like, why are they only fact-checking him? And it made my head hurt because here's the reality. The debates fact-checked both. They fact-checked both sides. But they didn't come up every time somebody said a fact and say true. No. That's not what a fact check does. It only highlights the incorrectness. So she had 2 or 3 in there that were like not totally wrong, but not totally right. Like that, like middle ground. She did have 2 or 3. If you go back and you check Politico and you check the fact check sites on the debate. But his was going off like a fucking coding alarm at the hospital because every single thing he says is a lie. And when we show you the proof, we show you the facts, we're not showing you opinions. We're not showing you anything that you agree or disagree on. Like this isn't up for debate. This is a fact. This is the truth. Guess what? You guys call it false. You call it fake. And I don't really know what to say to that other than to say that that's uneducated, because an educated person will never, ever dismiss facts, even when they don't like them. That's the part about being educated. That's the part about being that next vibrational level. That's the part about being a better human. You accept facts whether you like it or not. Notice, the majority of the Democrats have accepted the results of the election. We don't fucking like it, but we have accepted it. I haven't heard any chanting that he's not my president. I haven't heard any chanting about how this election was rigged. I haven't heard any of that. Could you say the same if the Dems had won? And see, the reason I'm struggling is because I want to do all of this, and I want to lead with love, and I want to lead with social justice, but I'm also so fucking angry, and I'm tired of trying to be respectful when I say things. Because I'm going to be totally fucking honest. If you voted for Trump, if you are a Republican who didn't vote because you wouldn't vote Democrat, but you didn't want to support Trump, guess what? I don't have anything nice left to say to you. Nothing. Literally nothing. And that is leading me to sit in an extremely uncomfortable space. I've also been sitting in the discomfort of the realization and the empathy of experiencing a smidgen, and I mean a fucking teeny tiny smidgen of what Black and other minorities have experienced their entire lives. Because everywhere I look, leading up to the election, it was white women staying on multiple Black comment uh content creators threads that, like, white women aren't voting for her, white women are voting for Trump. White women, da, 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 da. I am a white woman who won't even rock any red, white, and blue because anything flag related has been linked to fucking MAGA. And I want to be perfectly clear that that is not who I am. And I hear white women, white women, white women being thrown out all over. And then since the election, the the topic shifted and turned, and it became, how do we let people know that we're a white woman who didn't vote for Trump? And I felt that hard in my core because I am a white woman who did not vote for Trump, who despises every single thing he stands for. And I do, honest to God, see myself as an ally. 100%. I am your safe space. And as I said, I am willing to put my life on the line to remain a safe space, even if it means I can't remain a mother. And so the thing that we have to be so careful of, though, is because here's where the thoughts that were going through my head as I heard this. One, we're putting this all over social media. That means every single person on every single fucking side knows exactly what, like, they're talking about blue friendship bracelets. Okay, I get it. But everybody fucking knows that that's what it means. And you can buy a fucking blue friendship bracelet anywhere. So is that really, are we really going to be able to trust anybody who's wearing that? And these women are saying, I want to show solidarity. I struggle with that sentence because I think anybody can show solidarity. I think solidarity is super easy to display, to portray, to pretend. Solidarity is super easy. And I get it. You want to stand with them. And we will. But I don't know that it's solidarity. If we are straight white women, I don't think it's solidarity that we're showing, because we can't understand. Because just in a month, just in the past week, the number of times I hear white women on social media and I cringe. And I hear it and it's about something that doesn't define me at all. And I'm like, oh, how often have Black women, have other races been hearing that shit for generations? So I will not sit here and say that when I hear that, I know how you feel. I don't know how you feel. I know how you feel in terms of something that's very trivial. I know 245th piece of how you feel. I'm trying to show how I don't want to minimize the difference that my experience with this is and what your life experience has been. But I do want to say that long before I ever experienced this, I made social justice my life's goal. I made being a safe person in a safe space my life's goal. So I always felt like I was an ally. For color, for orientation, for gender, didn't matter. I always felt like I was an ally. But that doesn't mean that I had ever experienced anything that they have experienced. just because I accepted them for who they were. And I do not think there is anything in this world that is worth the cost of a life. I do not think there's anything in this world that where we can say one person is better than another unless we're talking about literally about MAGA and non-MAGA. Like legit, that's it. Um, this was the first time in my life I have been called out because of the color of my skin, because of my identity. And it makes me uncomfortable. And I will sit in that discomfort. And I know that what I am feeling is nothing in comparison to what you all have felt, to what trans people have felt, Black people, Middle Eastern, right? To all of my women, hijab wearing women who have heard the nasty, nasty, nasty things. So I will sit in that discomfort and I will be lumped in. But I don't think it's in solidarity. I think it's because even as a white woman, I know my voice goes farther than theirs. And it's my duty to use my voice. And I feel like maybe this is what all of my work over the past 10 years has been leading to. It's been leading to a point where I've been groomed to be strong enough to hold it for other people. I feel so many things. And I think we are all feeling so many things. And I think the one thing I'm really feeling, like really, really feeling, is how I have to work this into my coaching and my content, and what I need to lean into, and what parts of myself I have to forgive myself for being human. Because the reality is, as a human, from time to time, I am going to get goaded into clapping back. I am going to be goaded into reaction. And if I hold on to that shame and embarrassment, it holds me in place. So I can't. I have to let it go. Because clapping back at all of the people who voted for him does nothing. We accomplish nothing. At this point, we are not going to change anybody's mind. So I want to be perfectly 100% clear, in case by this entire video you are left with any semblance of where I stand, what I think, who I am. If you voted for Trump, you may never, no, wait, let me start over. If you voted for Trump, you will never be a piece of my life. You will never be a part of my life in any way, shape, or form. I do not care what our previous relationship was. Doesn't matter. If you stand idly if you stand quietly, if you don't plaster your beliefs all over social media, that's fine. But if your actions if your actions will show whose side you are on. If you are a Republican who did not vote because you couldn't bring yourself to check Harris on the ballot and you couldn't bring yourself to check Trump on the ballot, don't you are not a part of my life, and you never will be. I want nothing to do with you. If you are a mom, a daughter, a sister, a wife who wholeheartedly agrees with everything I said, but you sit here and you're like, I don't, at where you are in your life, at where you are at this time, it is not safe for you to voice your opinion, your thoughts, your feelings. If you, for any plethora of reasons, you say, I can't fight this because whatever the reason is, I need to be here, I need to be alive, and I need to be present. So I have to pretend this isn't happening. I get that. And you can't be in my life for your own safety. And I will forever pray for peace for you. There were a couple of years ago, where I could not have said what I am saying right now, that I couldn't have said that. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't. I couldn't. Now I can. And see, if you are somebody who has looked at a female or a man in your life and told them to stop stressing, to stop being emotional, to tell them they're being ridiculous, there's nothing to be scared of, instead of saying those things, why don't you try saying, tell me more about why you're so scared? Because their fear is coming from a past experience. Ask them about it. Broaden your horizons. Learn. I will stand and I will fight this with every ounce of my being. I will make sure that people know that I am a safe space. And I haven't quite figured out exactly how to do that without compromising any level of trust, right? But I will. But what I have to say, I forgot what I was going to say. Shit. I did so good this whole time. I felt like I was really doing good. Like my ADHD was really staying on track until this very moment. Damn it. I just want to say that, oh, that's what I was going to say. My mind is made up in terms of what I am willing to sacrifice for the hill that I am willing to die on. And we all have to make our choices. But what I will not be doing, because there's no point in it, because the election has already happened. The facts are the facts. What's coming is coming. We cannot, in fact, there's nothing that we can do until January when he takes office and we see how things start unfolding. Okay. But what I will not do any longer is play into the fear of the unknown. Because even if all of a sudden we changed 20 million MAGA supporters' views, there's still nothing we can do. He is still our next president. So clapping back, attempting to educate them when they don't want to be educated, attempting to tell them about Project 2025 and what we are scared of and the reality of what's coming, trying to explain tariffs to them and the fact that nobody is going to be making more money except for the fucking billionaires, it's useless. And what I've noticed in the past day as I scroll through content, the more content I see that's talking about that, which I already know, I already feel, it's taking my energy and it's depleting it. What we need to do right now is band together, find our communities, find locally who is your community, and start organizing very, very quietly while we go back to posting, creating, encouraging higher vibrational energy. Because the energy of clapping back at Trumpers and MAGAs, fuck, that's low vibration. And guess what? If we sink down to that vibration, we will never, ever, ever win this back. And we will win it back because this fight is not over. Not by a long shot. I have zero plans of living in any fucking dystopian reality. So it's not over. And if you voted for Trump and all of a sudden you're going, oh shit, but you actually suddenly wonder if maybe you are wrong, if you made the wrong choice, or you suddenly find yourself, because the election is over, because you have won, if you feel like you can let your guard down a tiny bit and have conversations instead of constantly being defensive, and you want to talk more and you want to be considered educated, so you want to try to open up your views, I am here for you. And with boundaries in place, I will absolutely have a conversation. I will absolutely be happy to sit down and talk calmly and respectfully about our differences and why this election is so personal to so many of us. I know this was long. I had so much to get out. I had so much to say. and you don't need to listen to my voice anymore. So thank you. Thank you. Now that everything is out of my body, I can start fresh. Here's to fresh content. I love you.